few weeks ago, I was listening to one of my favorite stations, CKNW, and a man named David Ash was being interviewed. And most of the conversation was centered on his book, Simple Wealth, 6 Proven Principles for Financial Freedom. And as he got more into the book and his 6 principles that he has adhered to all these years, I thought to myself, I need to read this book and I need to meet this man. He spoke very humbly about the spring of 1989, which is just over 30 years ago, when his bank accounts were empty, he had unpaid bills, they were piling up. He was 7 years behind on his income taxes. He wanted to run and hide, but he had no money and nowhere to go. So he filed for bankruptcy. He knew he needed to change both his attitude to wealth and he needed to adhere to a simple formula to get there. I relate to almost everything he has done to change and get back on the right track. The only thing I haven't done, but I've come close, is bankruptcy. I've experienced almost everything else my guest has gone through. So I could relate to his experience. I had to track David Ash down and ask if he would share some of his experiences and his winning formula for simple wealth. And he's here today, my guest. Please welcome David Ash.
Hello, Peter.
Good to have you. Thank you. Now,
Yes, my absolute
you look
pleasure.
younger than I thought you would look, which
Well,
is good.
I'm lucky, yeah, I guess.
And I want you to know I do have your book. There it is there, Simple Wealth. Excellent.
I'm honored.
So was it the bankruptcy or a combination of those things that you came to the realization you needed to change some of your habits, certainly as they applied to building your fortune and future wealth?
Yeah, yes, Peter, as you know, you read in my book, I come from humble beginnings. My parents weren't entrepreneurs or business people. And so I had no training or mentorship as it related to managing my personal finances. And however, I was ambitious. So I was a young salesman and I worked really hard and I earned a good living in my early 20s. But I had no structure to my financial life. I had no framework, no worldview as it came when it came to approaching my financial life. So what I experienced as a young man was it was kind of a real roller coaster ride because I was ambitious and I worked hard. I was able to earn more than a lot of my friends. I rose through the ranks of these different sales organizations that I was in. And so I'd have these years where my pockets were full and I was driving really nice cars. And then I, would move from these sales jobs into small, different enterprises, always looking at the top line, always looking at how much, the gross dollars coming in the door were either into my pocket or into the business, but never focusing and never paying attention to the details, to the accounting, to the bottom line, to actually how much was being delivered, after taxes and after expenses. I thought all that kind of stuff was really quite boring. And I felt anybody who was in accounting or an accountants were boring. And I figured that I was special and that I didn't need all of that stuff, that was just details. Someone else was going to take care of it. And so I worked really hard. And because of this sort of success, which I thought was quite special, I became quite arrogant. I was very prideful, and many young men are. And I ignored all of that, earned money, but got behind on my income taxes. And every year at the end of the year, I'd go to pay my taxes and I'd have business expenses that had piled up throughout the year that I didn't expect. And I'd say, next year, I'll get caught up next year. Anyway, by the age of 28, that caught up with me. The tax debt had compounded. The tax man showed up, and when they show up, and if you haven't filed your tax return, they're not very happy with you. So that was a crucible. That's what caused the bankruptcy. Was my inability to focus on the bottom line and to take accounting and financial discipline seriously. So at that time, though, I was with my wife and Lise, and we've been together for a couple of years, and she's a very down-to-earth gal from from small town Manitoba, a nurse, a registered nurse. And she had her own job and I had my business affairs. And we were together and going through this bankruptcy at that time in my life, having had what I thought was success, but now being absolutely broke, having a small business that was bankrupt and having no money. You can imagine at the age of 28, I was at the absolute lowest point of my young life. And I went to my wife and we weren't married at the time, but bankrupt. Well, you're still a lawyer. You can go get a job as a lawyer. If you're a high school dropout and your only job is being a commissioned salesman or running small little businesses and you go bankrupt, you're desperate, you're broke, you're desperate, and you're afraid. And so that fear in me at that time, I think, was a catalyst. I said to myself, okay, you're talented at making money. You know how to organize people. You know how to motivate people. You have a discipline. I was a very disciplined young man. I could work real hard, work real long, but all the money was going through my fingers, like sand through my fingers. And I said, if I'm going to continue to do this, if I'm going to be ambitious, if I'm going to work hard, I got to get this money management thing figured out. So against my, my natural instincts, I said, I got to do something. And I picked up that little book, Richest Man in Babylon. And it's a classic in this genre. It's written almost 100 years ago. It's a series of parables and short stories written in Babylonian times by George Clason. And it talks about the golden rules of wealth creation. And he breaks it down into golden rules or laws. And as I read that little book at that time, my heart, just opened up. I mean, I was lost. I had no spiritual dimension to my life at that stage of my young life. And money had become my God, and that's a whole nother story. But here I was lost with no framework, no worldview in terms of approaching my finances. And here I had these golden rules, these laws that offered guaranteed success over time. It didn't promise guaranteed success in a year, 5 years, or 10 years. The Richest Man in Babylon talked about universal truths, timeless truths that were as true in Babylon 5,000 years ago as they are today. And so I looked at that and I said, well, you know what? I'm a hard worker. I'm disciplined. If I apply these principles over time, no matter what, 20, 30, 40 years, at least I'll be okay. I'll be a whole bunch better off than my parents were. So I went to my wife to be at that time, gave her a copy of the book, and I said, sweetheart, I read this book. I think this is something we should do, but I need you to read it. And she read the book. And she said that the day that she read that book, she married me in her heart. She said that she saw me commit to us as a couple that day. And from that day forward, we started saving 10% of all we earn. It's the first and most important of the 6 proven principles that I outline in my book, that 10% of all you earn is yours to keep. It's so simple. It almost sounds trite. It sounds cliche, when you say it. I think many people have heard it, but it's the foundation of a good financial stewardship, of a good financial life. If you start with that principle, the rest of the principles, all the other laws come out of it. Because if you're able to save at least 10% of all you earn, then controlling your expenses, learning how to make your money multiply, and all these other principles will flow naturally out of that one. And so we embraced that one, and then slowly but surely, we embraced the other ones and learned how to be better stewards of our wealth. And here you and I are. I'm 60 years of age, or almost 61. I'm in Langley talking to you on a podcast. So they work.
And many podcasts, I'm sure, many Zoom conferences.
Yeah, that's what we have to do these days.
So you've been doing this for, say, 30 years? Did I miss that?
Well, so I have started applying these principles at the age of 28, and I'm 60. Yeah, so 32, 33 years. Yeah.
And you see no end to keep operating the way you're operating. I know you've got some houses and other investments, and that can't be related, did it?
Yeah. Well, so Peter, like I need to be clear here. So I'm an entrepreneur. That's how I'm wired. I've always been an entrepreneur. So the principles that I embraced at that time will work for anyone. It doesn't matter what you do for a living or how much money you earn. If you save 10% of all you earn and apply these principles by learning how to make your money multiply and the rest of it, you'll be fine in the final analysis. but I was wired to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't really capable of working for someone else. Once you work for as you know, Peter, once you work for yourself for a little while, you become unemployable. And that's pretty much who I was. So my wife and I had a deal. I said, sweetheart, look, I'm going to save 10% of all I earn always. We're going to buy rental houses. We're buying our own home. And that money is going to get set aside. That's for us. That's for our family. That's for our future. And I'll work as long as I have to work. I'll do whatever I have to do. We'll always have food on the table. We'll always have money to take the kids to a movie or go out for dinner on a Friday night. But I'm going to have to go out during the week, and I'm going to have to roll the dice and take a shot at my entrepreneurial dreams, because that's what I do. But I'm not going to gamble the farm on it. The farm was separate. Our single family home that we lived in, some rental properties that were the 10% account that we set aside, that was for the family, for our family's future. But extra money beyond the 10% that I would save, I would invest in various enterprises. So in my case, those enterprises, luckily, you know, I was involved. I started a business in 1994. I became one of the first people involved in the payday loan business in all of Canada. And I grew that into an online payday loan company in the United States, and ended up selling that company for a lot of money. We had 500 employees, and we were issuing millions of dollars in loans over the internet by the time I sold it in 2004. So where we are today, you know, we don't only own a few houses, of course. You know, I own a hockey arena here in our community, and we own commercial properties, office buildings, strip centers, and all that kind of stuff. That the quantum of that success, though, came out of this business that I was able to build and over a 10-year period, and then ultimately sell. But what I don't, and a lot of people would say, well, Dave, who would look at me from outside, who've known me for maybe 15, 20, 30 years even, would say, oh, well, David is well off because he started this business, and this particular business did really well, and he sold it and he made a bunch of money. That's only half the story. If I had not started that particular business, and that particular business had not done so well, if that business had gone out of business, let's say, and then I was forced to jump into some other kind of a sales business, and then I was just basically going to earn $100,000 or $200,000 a year as a hardworking sales guy or a sales manager working for somebody else, we would have, the plan that we had would have ended us up as a family fine. Today we would have owned, instead of, you know, the commercial properties that we own today and the wealth that we have today, we would have had a portfolio, very likely, of rental properties, single family homes with basement suites, perhaps some small rental apartment buildings, that kind of stuff. And that was the plan A. If I didn't succeed in my entrepreneurial endeavors, we had this other life that was dependent upon, that was for the family. So we had sort of, you know, the Ash family incorporated over here, and then we had my various enterprises, because going into business for yourself, as you know, Peter, is very risky. And most businesses, frankly, don't succeed. And that's the beginning and the end of that story. If you're lucky, if you're in the right guy, you're the right person, if you're the right person in the right place at the right time, you can knock it out of the park and you can make a bunch of money. But that doesn't happen to everybody. And I happened to be the right guy in the right place at the right time in that business, which is why we had that extraordinary success. So I'm saying all of this to say that I don't want people to dismiss these principles and say, well, you're wealthy because you had this entrepreneurial success. These principles will work on any level. And no matter what you're earning, if you apply them over time, you'll be fine.
So is it safe to say that when you started 30 odd years ago, and you started with the save the 10% of what you earned, would that still apply today? Are you still doing that today?
Well, well, we're saving a whole bunch more than 10% of all we earn today, because our ability, the money that we're earning from our various investments, of course, exceeds far more than, you know, we spend a tiny fraction of what we earn today. I guess, Peter, is so the simple answer is yes. And because we've been so blessed and doing so well, we're able to save a whole bunch more than that 10% today. Yeah.
That's good. How about that was covered in rule, when I say principle number 1, which I love. Principle number 2 is control your expenses today, so that you have money for the long term. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, when getting back again to where we started, the challenge I had as a young man was that, like many of us, I had I had champagne tastes on a beer budget, and I drove nicer cars than I should have. I remember I had bought a Corvette when I was 22 or 23 years of age that I financed 100% that I shouldn't have, and I ended up selling it at a loss. So I made all of those classic kinds of mistakes. So by the time, after reading our book, after embracing these principles that we read about in The Richest Man in Babylon, after starting to save our 10%, we started looking at everything, all of our expenses. Where was every dollar going? So my wife had a Jeep at that time, which we had recently bought, a YJ Laredo, financed at 100%. We had a monthly payment on that Jeep. We said, okay, that's got to go. Sold the Jeep. We even still owed the bank money at that time on the Jeep. We had to amortize the money we owed the bank at that time, paid off a loan over a couple of years. And we started to save the money that we normally would have paid for that brand new Jeep. We started putting that into our 10% account. And instead of driving a brand new Jeep, we started driving a $1,000 Oldsmobile that I bought off of some guy that had a loud muffler. But so we started looking at every single area of our life, whether it was our car, whether it was our vacation, didn't matter what it was. Every dollar we spent was discussed, it was talked about, and it wasn't done in a negative way because we embraced this idea together. There was an esprit de corps. My wife and I joined together in this idea that we are building something for our future, for our children and for our children's children. And that became an adventure, more of an adventure. So the sacrifice became, we took joy frankly, in the sacrifice because we had purpose and we were making progress. When you saw the bank balance growing and you went from having no money to have some money to having a little rental house, to owning your own home, you're seeing the progress, and every step you're taking, you're being more encouraged to control your expenses and taking actual joy in living frugally, where some people go, well, that's not a very nice car. I would grin and say, well, you know what? I can have any kind of car I want, but I'm happy with this $1,000 Oldsmobile because I'm putting money in the bank, right?
So would it be safe to say that you're probably doing more than this, but a minimum of 10% is still going into a fund somewhere?
Absolutely, yeah.
That never goes away.
Never. That's a lifelong principle until the day we die. Yeah.
Because rule number 3 is that money multiplies 7% per year. Money doubles every 10 years. Correct.
That's right. Yeah, the least appreciated secret of wealth creation is, the awesome power of compounding. It's been called the 8th wonder of the world. And, Warren Buffett, talks about it, and all these, the richest people in the world understand that time, when it comes to creating wealth, time is your best friend. And that having your money deployed, that your money works for you 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, doesn't come in late, doesn't ask for a raise. Your job, though, is finding a place for that money to work. And that's where, and now, of course, that's harder today than it's ever been. With interest rates being as low as they are, a lot of people are a little bit nervous about that, and they don't understand how to invest in the stock market. They don't understand perhaps real estate. But in my book, I have a couple of strategies that work well. I have one particular strategy that works really well for know-nothing investors, and that I personally employ, that works beautifully as it relates to investing in the stock market. And of course, real estate, I believe, is one of the very best investments you can make, owning your own home. That isn't always possible, depending on how much money you earn or are able to save, or sometimes your lifestyle. If you're a person that is forced to move every year because of your job, you're here this year in another city 2 years later, buying your own home may not be wise, because buying a house today, if it goes down in value, you don't want to have to sell it a year later or 2 years later. Real estate's a long-term investment. So if you're going to be able to anchor yourself safely somewhere for a long term, making your money multiply, I believe real estate is number one, your own home, number one. That's where it starts. And then some other great long-term strategies.
Explain to me your, I'm going to call them secrets number 4. They're really not secrets. They're basic rules. Never commit to anything immediately. Sleep on it.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So, as I said earlier, I'm a sales guy. And sales personalities, to be successful as a salesman, you have to be the kind of person that is able to take 100 no's for every yes. And you have to be incredibly positive. You have to be creative. All of those, being positive and being creative is great and being persistent is great when it comes to being successful as a salesperson. But when it comes to making money, with money, Peter, I apologize. You're editing this, right?
Yeah.
Pose the question one more time. I started going down a track, and I started the last.
Never commit to anything. Sleep on it.
There you go. I was talking about being a salesman. So being a salesman means that I have a short attention span as well, which is why
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So yes. So sleeping on it is important. I'm impulsive. Short answer is I'm impulsive, and that natural tendency to be impulsive, to be enthusiastic, has shot me in the foot in the past. Being an entrepreneur, sometimes that works. As an investor, however, making decisions before you really thought something out, before you've done the due diligence, before you've looked at all the research on something, can be very expensive. So what I've learned is I've divided myself into two personalities. I'm looking at our Zoom screen right now. I've got you on the left, I've got me on the right. Actually, in my head, I've got my accountant on the left, and I've got me on the right when I'm making a financial decision. So I've got a grumpy accountant, and I've got the positive sales guy and the positive entrepreneur on the right. So if someone pitches me with an investment opportunity, I sit there, I listen to it very politely. I allow myself to get carried away with the enthusiasm. I let the sales guy out. I listen to him. I encourage the person. I hear them out. I maybe even contribute with some creative ideas to what they're saying. But then I go home and I make a commitment to myself never to make a decision on the spot, because I am so easily geared up. I am so positive by nature. It's my natural predisposition. I know that positive guy, that sales guy in me, can make decisions too quickly and be burnt. So what I agree with myself is that, okay, Mr. Sales Guy, this idea will still be here tomorrow. I'm going to go home, and tomorrow morning when I wake up, my grumpy accountant, I'm going to give the deal to him. I'm going to let my grumpy accountant have a look at it. So in the morning when I wake up, the grumpy accountant in me opens up the file on this particular opportunity and has a look at it. And usually the grumpy accountant goes, "What the heck is that guy thinking?" And in about 1 or 2 minutes, he says, "This, forget about it. It's not worth your time, and it's not worth your energy." So then the salesman in me has to call up the person that was giving me this proposal, or send them a polite email and say, "You know what, it was awesome talking to you the other day, but you know what, this opportunity isn't for me, but have a wonderful day, and I wish you the very best of success." So sleeping on it is critical. And understand, the reason I talked about the grumpy accountant side of me and the positive sales guy in me is that this speaks to self-awareness, right? So understanding that I have that capacity to be impulsive, and actually admitting it, and defending myself from myself, and defending yourself or ourselves from ourselves is important. So being honest with yourself about your strengths, about your weaknesses, and finding little workarounds, ways to make sure that you don't shoot yourself in the foot is important.
Number 5, we've already talked about that, owning your own home, because that's the cornerstone of the beginnings of a fortune, for sure. I like that one. And no financial wealth. And the 6th one I've got is be enthusiastic and always go the extra mile. I love that one.
Correct. Yes, exactly. I mean, increase your ability to earn. That's basically what that means, right? So at the end of the day, one of the biggest arguments people will give for not being able to save 10% is they'll say, "Well, I don't earn enough. The job I have, or the business I have, isn't giving me the opportunity to do that." And I would say that it's important for us all to go into every day with our antenna up, looking for opportunities. Because if we don't think there are opportunities, you're right, there are no opportunities. But if you believe that there are opportunities, if you believe you're surrounded by opportunities, then of course, with your minds open to that prospect, then you'll be looking for them, and your mind will be ready to receive them as they appear. So whatever you do for a living, my encouragement to any listener is that, be open, have your antenna up, looking for those opportunities to increase your ability to earn. If your major stumbling blocks is that you don't have enough money to save, look for that. And then, of course, sometimes people's budgets are just really tight and they don't see an immediate way to do that. And I tell a story in the book about one of our tenants who so impressed me. They were immigrants from Cambodia. This family, the father worked 2 jobs. He had a regular day job, and then he had a part-time job. And the part-time job, they saved 100% of that money, I'm pretty sure, went into their savings account, which became the down payment for their first home, which then became the down payment for their business that they ultimately bought, and they became tenants of ours. So these kinds of immigrant stories of sacrifice, hard work and sacrifice, are not new. The idea that you can only work 40 or 35 or 40 hours a week, well, that's a luxury. That's really nice to live in the West and be able to do that. But if you're working 35 or 40 hours a week and you're saying, well, I don't earn enough to save 10% of that, well, my challenge to that person would be then, well, get a job a part-time job in addition to your full-time job that would allow you to earn 15 or 20% of whatever you earn in your regular full-time job and save 100% of your part-time job's income. And believe me, if you do that for a little while, you'll be so encouraged by doing that you'll want to continue to do that. And I think that also that would probably give you some motivation to look at ways to increase the amount of money that you're earning at your full-time day job. And who knows, you might even learn something that will allow you to grow that income.
Yeah, I wrote a note down based on what you said. Do more than you're paid to do, and pretty soon you'll be paid for what you do.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Always go the extra mile. It'll never bite you. It'll never hurt.
And the interesting thing is 98% of the people don't even go that mile, let alone do the extra mile. So you're really in an exclusive club by just going a little extra, doing it just a little more.
Yeah, as an employer, as someone who's employed hundreds of people over the years, you're right, Peter. I mean, there's the vast majority of people just are doing what they have to do to get by and to earn their paycheck. But that person who goes the extra mile, as an employer, you go to bed at night praying for that guy. You say, Lord, send me another one of those guys. I need one of those guys. And when he shows up, you notice him. You say, you at the end of the day, you're talking to your management team. You say, well, we need someone. And you say, you know what? Fred goes the extra mile. He's in early. He stays late. Never gives us an argument. He's very positive. That person stands out. And they may not be the most popular person among their peers, because their peers perhaps are being challenged by that extra effort, by that enthusiasm. But as an employer, those people stand out, and that will always serve you well. Always.
I encourage everyone that's watching today, get a hold of this book, Simple Wealth, 6 Proven Principles for Financial Freedom. Our guest has been David Ash. How exactly do they get this, David?
We're on Amazon. We're on all the major platforms. So if you go to our website, simplewealthbooks.com, you'll be able to scroll down and you'll see all the various online retailers that carry our books. So Amazon.ca, Amazon.com. It's on Kindle as well if you want to put it on Kindle. The audiobook, if you're a person who likes to listen to books, is coming out in the next couple of weeks. And so all those online retailers.
It's as I said it before we got the interview, I read a book a week, and I've already read this book twice. And my wife is into the second time. David, thank you so much for being here. You're more gregarious and friendly than I anticipated, which is wonderful. And that's obviously part of your success in terms of how positive you are about what you do. Congratulations, how you've gone from bankruptcy to significance, and a good attitude and positive approach to life along the way. We've got to do this again. Maybe you and I can have a lunch or a dinner or something when we can, when this pandemic is over.
Wonderful, Peter. I look forward to it. Thank you. I'm so happy to have had the chance to get to know you and to be on this podcast. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, David. God bless.
Okay.